wasn't until I was actually in business school, funny enough, studying for an accounting exam and thinking to myself, A, this sucks. And B, I should be writing a story, right? I was living in Germany at the time, and it was almost this, like the apple falls on my head, and I'm like, I should be doing something else. Unfortunately, I was in business school and I had student loans to pay off. And so I had to go into the business world and get some money and income. One of the hard realities of life. But by the same token, I knew at that point that that's when I wanted to at least attempt to write a book. That was 1993. And so that's what started me on the path of actually writing books. So that's how sort of fiction started for me. And what I did is at that time is I actually went to some bookstores. I called some bookstores in the US when I was living in Germany and said, hey, where would you start, basically, if you were someone in my shoes? And I explained sort of my situation. And there's an amazing bookstore that used to be there in Denver. And after explaining my situation, they were like, well, you've got to pick up a copy of Heimskringla. Mm-hmm. And it has all of these sagas in it, and you can find some really interesting characters in it. At least as a starting point, start there. And I bought it and I had it shipped over to Germany, and I just started devouring it, like just reading all of these different, sagas, and especially the saga of the Kings. And that's where I found some of my characters. In fact, my first character, Håkon, came directly out of Heimskringla. My next character, my next series, Olaf, also, his saga's in there as well. So, that's been my primary source for, at least for the bare bones of the story. And then I build from there.
Yeah, when I was looking at your website and looking at sort of the focus, it seemed thematically very heavy in Norway. But now I was going to ask you about why that was, but now I know.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, it is one of those places where you have all of these tales sort of set one on top of the other. And you have a lot of sort of lines between, the characters from a family sense. So you can start to connect the dots, even though a lot of, the timing is off, and it was written hundreds of years after these people actually existed. I liked that fact because it gave me a lot of leeway in terms of storytelling.
Have you been to Norway to get a feel of the place?
I have, actually. On that trip when I was living in Germany, before I came home, my wife and we had an option. We could actually either go to Spain and Portugal, or we could go to Scandinavia. And I begged and pleaded. And so we ended up driving up through Germany to all the way around Denmark, took the ferry over to Sweden, did the west coast of Sweden, and then drove all the way through Norway.
Nice.
Yeah. And funny enough, using Heimskringla as our guide. So I was literally like looking at some of the maps that are in the version that I had, and some of the place names that are, existed in that version. And ended up finding some of these spots that they're talking about, which was, for me, it was a thrill. My wife was probably not as interested as I was, but I was loving it.